Right now, though, I want to welcome in a guy that I've known for probably close to 2 decades at this point. Longtime NFL executive, now podcaster, columnist, triathlete. Anything else you want to add here? Andrew Brandt is with us in studio. Andrew, great to see you, man.
Great to see you, Tom. I remember way back in the day, you were covering the Pack.
I was working for the Green Bay Press Gazette.
Green Bay Press Gazette.
0709. There's a saying in law that you never ask a question that you don't know the answer to.
Of
so
course.
I might be asking for real trouble here. But what is your fondest for your most prevalent memory of 20-something-year-old Tom Pelissero covering the Packers?
You were hardworking. You were ethical. We had such a contingent. Then they're all, some are still there, some are out in the world elsewhere like yourself. But I always remember going to they send all us young executives every year to sort of hear from the sage words of older people. And I remember listening to Bill Polian one year, and he's like, you guys have to learn how to deal with the media, and the media is everywhere, and the media is all over you. And I'm looking out, and I'm like, okay, Indianapolis, right? They had one beat reporter from the Indianapolis Star. They maybe had a TV person. That was it. We had Green Bay Press Gazette, Milwaukee Journal, Madison State Journal, 5 TV. I mean, it was like, okay, Bill Polian. Well, do you have any idea what little Green Bay has compared to Indianapolis?
Well, it's the depth of coverage there, too.
It's amazing.
And it was a great place to learn because you had the guys like Bob McGinn and Pete Doherty who had covered the team forever.
Silverstein.
That was the home, right? Spoon there, Demovsky, they were already veterans on the beat at that point. There aren't other markets where you get 5,000-word tape breakdowns every Monday. But sure enough, I started doing them too because that just was what you did there. And it was great competition, which breeds improvement, I think. The competition is a good thing in the end.
In the end, it's the greatest story in sports. I mean, there's a town of 100,000 people, and they have an NFL team. I'll tell you this quick story. David Baker ran the Arena League. Mm-hmm. Huge mountain of a man, David Baker, the guy who
Hall of Fame.
Hands out the Hall of Fame. He would come every year, and one year he met with me, and he said, listen, all these teams are getting Arena League teams, Atlanta, New Orleans, and we're thinking about one here. And I'm like, sure, we'd love an arena team here. And we went through all the financials, and we sort of came to a deal. And I said, okay, can I tell the staff we're going to have an Arena League team in Green Bay? He's like, yeah, but just one thing. It's going to be Arena 2.
Right.
Because you're not big enough for an Arena League team. You only have 100,000 people. I'm like, so let me get this straight. We're big enough to have a legacy franchise in the NFL, but we're not big enough to have a team in the AFL. Yeah, you're going to be Arena 2. I'm like, no, we're not. We're not doing Arena 2. So it just shows you how unique that place is. I mean, this. The fans wrap themselves around the team like no place ever. I'm pumping gas. Hey, how's that Aaron Rodgers thing?
Right.
It's like you can't. I wasn't GM. I wasn't coach, but everybody knew me and everybody knew my family. That's a truly unique place.
I remember the story I always tell to kind of contextualize what it's like and the level of attention there beyond obviously the depth of the media coverage was I moved to Green Bay in March of 2007.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of getting to know the town. I stopped at a Burger King, I think it was. And so I'm having lunch and I hear this conversation behind me, and it's 4, little old ladies, 80 years old, sitting there eating at Burger King. And I'm hearing their conversation, and I realize they're talking about whether Frank Walker should be the nickel. And I'm just going, this is beyond anything that anyone should be talking about, period, much less just, a bunch of people getting together having lunch. But that's the level to which it goes there. And I think that all goes back to, the media side of things and the way that team is covered because it's such a small town. Because, when I was living in Green Bay and I lived downtown for my last couple of years there, and it's I was in the building across from Charles Woodson. I lived down the hall from Pat Lee. I'd see, every player on that team just around. You'd see Aaron in the back of Fox Harbor just having a beer on Friday night, and that was totally normal. Running to Will Blackman at Subway. These are real stories.
Yeah. It never happens anywhere else. Quick story, we'll move to other things. I'm at vacation, Door County. I'm like, okay, I'm getting away. Mike Sherman calls and we're doing a trade. We need a tight end. We're Buffalo Bills. So I'm making the trade on the beach, and my phone dies. So I go to this Ranger shack. I got my little boy with me. I'm like, can I use your phone? I'm Andrew Brandt. I need to make a trade. I'm with the Green Bay Packers. He looks at me like, who the F? No. I'm like, you understand. I need to make a trade. We need your phone right now before 4 o'clock deadline. And he says, I don't know. I said, listen, we're trading David Bowens to the Buffalo Bills for a tight end named Bobby Collins, but it won't happen unless you let me use your phone. Now I got him. He looks at me, looks down. He says, why are we trading Bowens? I said, what? He said, why are we trading Bowens? I said, I'll tell you. Let me do the trade. He said, Bowens is good. Why are we trading Bowens? I said, hold on. I do the trade. I'm like, we need a tight end. We had a lot of tight end. Anyway, that's a story. That's Green Bay fans. That's Packer Nation.
So one prominent Packers trade, slightly bigger than Bowens for the tight end. Davante Adams gets traded a few years ago to Las Vegas. Now we're in a really unique situation with the Raiders where this was probably always going to happen in terms of the Raiders knew they know Davante is close with Aaron. They know he probably wants to be there. This is probably going to happen closer to the trade deadline.
Right.
Then there's a variety of different mechanics and things become public via an Instagram, like among other things here. But the power dynamics seem to have shifted at least somewhat in terms of the willingness of players to use leverage in situations. We saw it with Brandon Ayuk recently. When you look at Davante Adams, of course, you were on the cap side, but you were very involved with football operations and everything else. What do you make of the current situation with Davante Adams and how this plays out from the team standpoint?
We'll go back to 2021. There was a lot of emphasis on Aaron's not happy in Green Bay. There wasn't much emphasis on Davante Adams, and he's the one that got traded, not Aaron. Aaron was the next year. But the situation to me is this guy went to a place he wanted to play with his college quarterback. College quarterback signs Derek Carr, huge extension, lasted 6 months. He's off to the Saints. He's played with a sort of a lesser group of quarterbacks since, and he's like, you could tell in that Netflix last year, he's just frustrated. He's out. His mind seems out. He wants out. And when you have a star player that wants out, that's infectious. The one thing I know being around a team is it's okay for some no-name player to be unhappy, but when your star's unhappy, that's contagious. So you want to remove that from the situation. Now, I think, and you may know from reporting, it's just a matter of who and when. And what leverage do they have with a player that wants to get out? Not a lot. He went from the Packers for a 1 and a 2. They're maybe lucky to get a 2. And they're just going to play it out. Then, as I always talk about, there's the financial element. He's got 2 huge years at $36 million, but as I always talk about, not guaranteed, so they're not really real years. So we have the trade compensation element, which is one thing, but it's also the financial compensation. What's he going to get paid going forward? How much guarantees? So you have to make a trade, the acquiring team. Then you have to make a deal with Davante and his agent. It's a 2-part thing. It's going to take a while. Like you said, I don't think it's imminent. I don't know if it happens within a week or 2, but they got a month. One of
the fascinating parts of this, too, is I know that there are some GMs, because I've talked to them in the past few days here, who would say if Aaron's been talking to Davante nonstop, and if Davante's trying to force his way to the Jets, you could say, hey, we'll trade you, or you're not going to the Jets. We're going to maintain a level of this, because then that has a trickle-down effect on how every other situation approaches. I think back to when Favre got traded in 2008, which was the dynamics in that are completely different because he's retired. He made clear in that press conference that he wasn't really retired. I know I can play, but I don't think I want to. 3 weeks later, he's on Greta Van Susteren and doing a 2-part interview across Fox News for 2 hours.
I heard my name on that.
Yeah, that's right. So, but that was a situation, as I always understood it, it came down to Tampa and the Jets. Favre wanted to go to Tampa in part because I think they played the Packers in week 4, and then Ted Thompson traded him to the Jets, and the Jets had to convince him to go there. Am I remembering that correctly? And what were the dynamics in that situation?
I think you got to wait for some of that till my book one day. But I do think the team we were most worried about was not Tampa. It was Minnesota. You're
right.
The Vikings, where he really wanted to go.
And that was exactly that
Darryl
mentality.
Bevell was there, his former coordinator, and he had an affinity for going there for a lot of reasons. One, to get back at the Packers. But the trade was actually written out as the Jets could not trade him back to an NFC North team, at least for a year. So that's where that went. So, yeah, I mean, I looked at Brandon Ayuk, and they had trades. You may know more than I do. Be with the Patriots, with the Browns,
and the Steelers.
Maybe with the Commanders, whatever, or Steelers. But he forced no, and I look at that situation, I'm like, what's going on? You know, the 49ers, I thought were just going to let him play out the year. They drafted a receiver number 1, and they end up paying him top of the market. The bigger picture, Tom, is that wide receiver market, starting with Davante and Tyreek Hill when they both got traded and got huge contracts, has totally escalated. Where you have what some people would think is just above average players making $25, $28 million a year. I'm not talking about CD or Justin Jefferson. This is a different market. And I think there's an inefficiency there where you have the top running backs making $10, $12 million. You have the top corner, Surtain just signed for 21. You could argue shutdown corner is much more valuable than a top receiver unless you're Jefferson or Lamb. But this is an inefficiency that's happened in the NFL the past 6 months. And I'm not sure if I were a team, I would allocate resources differently.
I mean, Brandon Ayuk making $30 million a year is a classic example of, is he really even a number 1 receiver? There's a lot of people who would say, like, on talent, yes, but like the consistency, the production hasn't been there.
And he created his own leverage by his discontent. Think about that. He created his own leverage by his discontent. If he was happy, I don't think they would have done a deal. If he said, yeah, I'm coming in, we'll see what happens, I don't think they would have done a deal. So that's what's going on.
And now he still doesn't put on the right shorts for practice.
Well, 49ers probably regret it.
So let me ask you about this, too, because I saw we just talked about Brett Favre. You tweeted something on the last day of the Oakland Coliseum, which was the A's final game. But you were there the night of the Favre game after his father had passed away the night before. Take me through that entire situation.
Let me tell you quickly. We went to Oakland. Mike Sherman took the team out 2 days before, so we're staying in that Piedmont Hotel. Had a nice off day on Sunday. The game was Monday night. I get a call from Bus. Bus is Brett's agent, Bus Cook. Usually he's telling jokes, whatever. And he calls me and his voice is very different. Where's Brett? And I said, I don't know. It's a day off. Where's Brett? And he said, Irv died. His father, Irv. And I'm stunned, of course. Brett is notorious for you can't find him. So we look around. He never carries his phone. We finally find him on the golf course with Doug Peterson and Ryan Longwell. And we hand Doug the phone, and Deanna's on, his wife's on, and tells him. He comes back. He says right away, we put him in a hallway, we talk to him, I'm playing. I am playing. This is what Dad want me to do. He addresses the team. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was amazing. And then, of course, that Monday night at Oakland Alameda Coliseum, it looked like those passes were dropped from the sky. It was unbelievable. I'm not a spiritual person, but something was going on. And he walked off that field with his wife, and it was just a magical night at Oakland Coliseum. And as we saw the A's leave last week, and the end of that was my first memory of that stadium.
Appreciate you being here. I got one more thing for you on a totally different note here, because there's a lot going on right now in college football. Obviously, the entire landscape has shifted. But when the UNLV quarterback flat out leaves, just says, hey, I was promised $100,000, which, by the way, a lot of money, but not a lot of money, right?
My first reaction was, that's all?
Right. Yeah. Like $5 million. Okay, I get it, but $100,000. And now you're going to take the rest of the year off and go back into the portal. To me, this was like one of those landslide type moments where other players now are going to go, wait, so he did that over 100,000? And if I'm not getting this, if I'm not getting playtime, whatever, what does that situation say to you about where over, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years, pending whatever rules and safeguards are put in place, where does the entire landscape of college football go?
Well, you mentioned my job. My day job is I run a program at Villanova University in sports law.
I left that one out. He had 7 other titles. I got through all those. I forgot.
That's the college angle here. Listen, we're at an inflection point in college sports. It has changed dramatically. Primarily, I have to say, Tom, people like me, lawyers have attacked the NCAA for rules that have existed forever to keep, quote-unquote, amateurism in the business. And now, after Mark Emmert had his head in the sand for 15 years, Charlie Baker, the new president, is dealing with it. There are all kinds of lawsuits. Basically, it comes down to this. If you let a music major make $100,000 with the New York Philharmonic, you let a chemist make whatever with Dow Chemical, you cannot restrict athletes. That's what a judge and a lawyer would say. That has now come to fruition. These benefits are being allowed. Courts are saying you can't do that. So NIL is really standing for now it's legal. which is you pay these guys, they play. It's not doing an ad for McDonald's. It's not doing an ad for Pepsi. It is playing. What the NSA has tried to avoid forever, which is pay for play. And in this new lawsuit, they're still trying to have language that says you can't do that. What I think will happen is for 90% of college sports beyond big-time football and basketball, the NCAA will serve a purpose. The NCAA will regulate, will have championships, will be the governing body. For big-time college basketball and football, something else. It won't be amateur. It won't be totally pro sports, but there's going to be something else, and that's already started with college football. You have a situation now where I heard from a coach, I won't say who or where, that before a bowl game last year, the player said, I'm not playing unless I get another $100,000 of NIL. That's not even the figure, maybe more. And the coach held his ground, and the guy did play. But the Sluka situation, you talked about the $100,000, I'm not getting paid, I'm out. Take that to the next level. Big game coming up, I'm not playing. NCAA tournament game in basketball, I'm not playing. Especially if they haven't paid. And collectives and boosters haven't paid all these commitments. So I think, like you said, that is a line in the sand moment that's just happened. We're going to see a lot more of it. And
the whole idea of an assistant coach saying, we'll give you $100,000. And the player goes, all right, I'll move to Las Vegas and enroll at your university and play this thing out on a verbal. That's the old college football.
That's SMU in the 80s.
Hey, here's $100,000 in the paper bag. Don't tell anybody you got this. If it's not on paper, that's probably the biggest lesson here, which is have somebody who's an actual representative. If you're somebody who thinks you're making money off playing college sports, get somebody who knows what the laws are about this. Don't go and start 3 games over $100,000 and then walk.
Yeah. There will be lawyers. I've looked at these agreements sometimes, Tom. They have your rights in perpetuity. They can use your name, image, likeness in 30 years. There's no limit to your services. Yes, have someone important look at that. Some lawyer, a business person. That was the problem with Sluka. Assistant coach, I saw Colorado assistant coaches going to Saudi Arabia to get some PIF money for Colorado. I mean, this is the Wild West.
That sounds right.
I'm sure Dion loved that. This is the Wild West world we live in college sports.
Andrew, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Great seeing you again.
Always enjoy being out.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.